Welcome back for another deep dive. We've been hearing a lot from you guys lately about energy security, and so that's what we're diving into today.
But we're looking at it kind of through a new lens this time around.
Through renewables.
Exactly. Renewable energy.
So we've got, to help guide us, a 2024 report from the International Renewable Energy Agency.
IRENA.
IRENA, yeah. And the report's called Geopolitics of the Energy Transition, Energy Security.
It's a really, really fascinating look at this whole...
Yeah. What's IRENA all about?
Well, they're, basically supporting the global shift to sustainable energy, right? So that's, I think it's a really valuable perspective to be looking at energy security from.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what exactly are we hoping to kind of uncover as we go through this report?
Well, I think one of the big things is, how are these new renewable energy sources impacting global power dynamics, trade relationships? What does it mean for countries that are trying to be energy independent? And I think what's so interesting is it's like we're moving from this world of like who has the fuel to who can harness the power,
That's like a massive shift.
It is.
And it makes you think about how much conflict we've seen
Oh, absolutely.
over,
Yeah.
who has the oil and gas.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a statistic in the IRENA report that really kind of puts this into perspective. They say that back in 2022, 86% of the global population
Wow.
lived in countries that were net importers of fossil fuels.
Wow. Okay.
So that's 8.1 billion people that are relying on energy flowing across borders,
Yeah.
which can be disrupted by, any number of factors.
I think we're seeing that play out.
All the time.
Yeah. I mean, look at what happened in Texas in early 2024 with that gas pipeline freeze.
Right.
Climate-related issues causing drops in natural gas output.
Yeah, huge disruptions.
Yeah, it makes you think how many other regions are facing similar,
Vulnerabilities.
vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
especially as climate change intensifies.
Yeah. Yeah. And the report really uses that as an example of how, these centralized energy systems that are so dependent on fossil fuels,
Yeah.
can be very fragile. And they
Yeah.
contrast that with the inherent resilience, right, of renewables,
Yeah.
wind and solar.
Mhm.
These are resources that aren't concentrated in just a few locations or reliant on these long, complex supply chains.
Yeah.
It makes them much less vulnerable to, geopolitical tensions or natural disasters.
They're talking about a more decentralized.
Much more decentralized and potentially much more stable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but then what about global trade? I imagine we're not just going to completely eliminate our reliance on other countries.
No, I think interdependence isn't going away,
Right.
but it's definitely transforming. And what's so fascinating is the way it's transforming is we're moving from reliance on fuel imports to a reliance on trade in the technologies and components, so the actual like solar panels, wind turbines, the expertise to install them, maintain them.
So instead of shipping the oil and gas,
Right.
you're shipping the means to...
You're shipping the means to create it yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
That seems like that could really...
That could really level the playing field.
Yeah. Especially for those countries that have been so heavily reliant on.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that the report says that's kind of mind-blowing is that global trade in energy itself will likely decrease as renewables dominate.
Oh, wow.
Like right now, something like 40% of current maritime cargo is fossil fuels.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And that number is expected to just like shrink dramatically.
Makes you wonder how that's going to affect
The whole shipping industry.
the shipping industry. Yeah. Global trade routes.
Yeah, are we going to see new shipping lanes emerge?
Yeah.
Or, existing ones be repurposed? Yeah, it's a fascinating
that is really interesting.
question, yeah.
Okay.
And the report does touch on, the potential reshaping of these global trade routes as the energy landscape changes, but I want to talk about electricity.
Okay. Is this
Now,
more than just plugging in our appliances?
it's more than that.
Okay.
It's about cross-border electricity trade.
Oh, okay.
Right? Which is, being facilitated by all these advancements in high voltage transmission technologies.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine, like, countries being linked by these vast electrical grids,
Yeah.
sharing the power that's generated from renewable sources.
So it's like not only is it decentralized within a country,
Right.
But you're also
You're creating this, this
like a,
interdependency.
yeah, like a codependency
Yeah, where nations are relying on each other
for grid stability.
for grid stability and to, balance these variable sources like wind and solar.
It is like a whole new level of
It is. It's a whole new energy
diplomacy.
Yes. It's like imagine countries having to actually coordinate their energy policies,
Yeah.
collaborate to manage these shared electrical grids. I mean,
It's fascinating.
it really is. It's a whole nother level of energy diplomacy and one that could, obviously foster cooperation.
But also tension.
Yeah, potentially lead to some new sources of tension.
It's really making me see how this energy transition is about so much more than just like changing the way we power our homes and businesses.
Yeah, it's way bigger than that.
Reshaping the
Right.
whole geopolitical landscape.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that leads us to another big player that's emerging in all this.
Okay.
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen. I mean, I've heard so much buzz about hydrogen as a clean fuel, but how does it fit into like this larger conversation about energy security?
Well, so green hydrogen, which is, hydrogen that's produced using renewable energy sources, it offers a really, I think, potential solution for industries
Okay.
and transportation sectors that are difficult to electrify directly.
Okay.
So things like heavy industry, long-haul trucking, aviation.
Okay, so why is green hydrogen so appealing from this geopolitical perspective?
Well, one of the big things is, unlike fossil fuels that are very concentrated in specific regions,
Right.
green hydrogen production, it can be much more geographically diverse.
Oh,
You don't need to be sitting on top of an oil field to be able to produce it.
interesting.
So this opens up all kinds of opportunities for regions with abundant renewable resources, like
Yeah.
Africa, for example, to become key players in the global energy market.
So instead of just having the traditional energy powerhouses, we could
It could be a total different
in
landscape. Yeah,
more diverse.
exactly. Yeah.
That would definitely
It could be a real game changer.
shake things up a bit.
It could. It really could. But, like with any emerging technology, there's challenges and things to consider, and one of the big ones is materials.
Materials.
Yeah.
This is a question I think a lot of people have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we hear so much about lithium, rare earths,
Right.
cobalt, all these things that go into batteries, solar panels, wind turbines.
All the critical materials, yeah.
Are we just trading one dependency for another?
It's a good question, and it's a valid concern, and the report actually acknowledges that this could be a potential vulnerability.
Okay.
But I think what's important to remember is that even if there were a disruption in the supply of these materials, the impact wouldn't be the same as a fossil fuel crisis.
Oh, okay. So what's the difference?
Well, it's more likely to be a slowdown, not a complete shutdown.
Okay.
Right. It's not like, if we run out of oil,
Right.
our transportation systems grind to a halt
Right.
because we just don't have the fuel to power them.
Yeah.
But if there's a shortage of lithium, for example,
Yeah.
it's going to primarily impact the production of new batteries,
Okay.
not the functioning of the ones we already have.
So it wouldn't be like we all of a sudden.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like the lights go out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That does make me feel a little less anxious about the whole materials issue, but I'm still curious about how we can, address this potential vulnerability in the long term.
Yeah, and the report points to two key strategies,
Okay.
Recycling
Okay.
and technological innovation.
Okay.
So as we transition to a more circular economy, recycling is going to play a really, really big role
Yeah.
in reducing our reliance on virgin materials.
Mining less.
Exactly. Mining less, reusing more.
Yeah.
And then on the technological innovation side,
Mhm.
this can lead to the development of technologies that require different materials,
Okay.
potentially ones that are more abundant or less geopolitically sensitive.
So it's not even just about finding new sources of the existing materials.
Right.
You're talking about whole new technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for example, lithium iron phosphate batteries, right? They use readily available materials,
Mm-hmm.
and they just have a lot less, like, geopolitical baggage associated with their supply chains.
Okay, so it's a constant.
It's a constant evolution,
Yeah.
And the report really emphasizes that continuous innovation in both the materials and technologies is going to be essential to create this resilient and sustainable energy future.
So with all these moving parts, right,
It's a lot.
the renewables, the trade, the materials,
It's a lot to keep track of.
does it even does it even make sense to talk about energy security in the same way that we used to?
That's a great question, and it's one that I think really gets at the heart of this new era of energy that we're moving into, you know?
Yeah.
The way we define energy security and the way we approach it has to evolve to reflect these changing dynamics.
Total.
And that's actually exactly what we're going to delve into.
Okay.
In part 2 is this deep dive.
I'm hooked. All right, see you then for part 2. Okay, so picking up where we left off, I'm really intrigued by this idea that our very definition of energy security needs an update.
You're right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's more than just keeping the lights on.
It's so much more than that. It's not just about availability anymore. It's about, resilience,
Yep.
sustainability,
Yeah.
ensuring that everyone benefits,
Yeah.
It's about creating a system that's built to last, adapts to change, and doesn't leave anyone behind,
It's got to be equitable.
It has to be.
Okay, so how do we achieve this multifaceted energy security in this world where we're increasingly powered by renewables?
Yeah.
What are the key factors we got to be thinking about?
Well, I think one of the most important ones is access to technology.
Okay.
Right. It's not enough to just have sunshine or wind, Right.
You need the knowledge, the manufacturing capabilities, the infrastructure
Yeah.
to harness those resources.
It's kind of like baking, right?
Yeah,
You can have all the best ingredients.
exactly.
But if you don't know the recipe or you don't have an oven, you're not going to end up with the cake.
I love that. That's a great analogy. And this is especially critical, I think, for developing countries.
Right.
They need support to actually build their own renewable energy industries and not just become reliant on imports
Yeah.
from, a handful of dominant players.
Right.
If we really want a just and equitable energy transition, we need to make sure that everyone
Has the tools.
has the tools to participate. Exactly.
So it's about empowering them to become.
To become energy self-sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just shifting dependence.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another key factor is, I think, system flexibility.
Okay.
Right? So as we rely more and more on things like wind and solar, which are, inherently variable. Right. The sun's not always shining, the wind's not always blowing.
Right, exactly. So we need to have really smart solutions in place to kind of manage these, fluctuations in supply and demand.
It's a balancing act.
It really is. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
Making sure we have enough power when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing.
Yeah.
So the report emphasizes, the importance of things like energy storage,
Okay.
which is basically like having a giant battery for the grid, right?
Okay.
And then grid interconnections, so allowing countries to actually share electricity across borders.
Right. Okay.
So you can imagine this much more interconnected and
Right.
dynamic energy system,
Yeah, where they're cooperating.
where countries are working together to balance their grids and ensure a stable supply.
Yeah. Yeah. It ties back to what we were talking about, that codependency.
Exactly. It all ties back to that. Yeah.
And the energy diplomacy.
Yeah, and I think when countries are relying on each other to manage these interconnected grids,
Yeah.
the stakes of international cooperation, I think, become even higher.
Totally. And it's not just the grids that are connected. It's like
It's everything.
politically,
Yeah.
decisions made in one country affect everybody else.
It's this whole new level of interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And we also have to think about safeguarding the infrastructure itself.
Oh, right, right.
Cybersecurity becomes huge in a world where these energy systems are so reliant on digital technologies.
Because one cyber attack,
One cyber attack could have a cascading effect.
right, not just electricity, but all the essential services.
All the essential services, exactly.
Right.
And then you have the physical threats as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Extreme weather events,
Mm-hmm.
deliberate acts of sabotage, So the report really, it highlights the need to be thinking about all these vulnerabilities. It's about having a holistic view of security, understanding that these energy systems are embedded within this complex web of social, economic, and environmental factors.
You can't look at it in isolation.
You can't just look at it in isolation.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about building like stronger power lines or more secure computer systems. It's about
addressing the underlying vulnerabilities.
right that make them more susceptible.
Exactly. Yeah. And we can't talk about energy security without talking about human security.
Oh, right. Human security.
This idea that...
Remind me again.
Yeah, so human security is basically, recognizing that energy isn't just an economic commodity.
Right.
It's fundamental to human well-being.
Right.
So human security means ensuring that everyone has access to affordable, reliable energy, no matter where they live or their economic status.
Yeah, because, I think that energy poverty that we hear about can really...
It can trap people.
Trap people in poverty?
You're a cycle of poverty. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really, it's fundamental.
It is. It's fundamental to opportunity, to just, to so many aspects of human development.
Yeah. It's and even social unrest.
Absolutely.
That people don't have.
It's a huge factor. Yeah. And human security also means, I think, considering the social and economic impacts
Of the transition itself.
Of the transition itself, right.
Yeah.
So as we move away from fossil fuels, we need to make sure that, workers in those industries aren't left behind. Yeah. And that, communities that are dependent on those jobs have pathways to new opportunities.
Yeah.
So it's about ensuring that the transition is a just transition.
That benefits everybody.
That benefits everyone, exactly.
Okay, this is really insightful. I feel like we've gone way beyond the headlines.
Jack, we're digging.
And started to really, really grasp this complexity of energy security, in this new world that we're in.
Yeah, and I think that's what we try to do here on the deep dive, right? Is to really equip you with the knowledge and the perspective to think critically about these issues.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this part, I do want to touch on one more point that I think the report emphasizes that I think has some really, really profound implications for geopolitics and trade in the coming years.
Okay, lay it on me. What's this big?
All right, so they basically make the case that we're on the verge of a major shift in the geography of the global economy, right? So as we decarbonize, the places where energy is produced, the ways in which it's transported, the very nature of energy trade are all going to change dramatically.
Give me an example, because that sounds massive, but I'm having trouble.
Okay, so let's think about electricity.
Okay.
Right. We talked about the rise of cross-border electricity trade. Right, yeah.
So as those transmission technologies continue to improve, and interconnections expand, you can imagine that regions with tons of renewable resources could become major electricity exporters.
Okay.
Right. And that's going to completely reshape global energy flows.
Like those giant solar farms in North Africa powering Europe, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Or massive wind farms off the coast of Scotland. Sending clean electricity to continental Europe.
That's amazing.
It's pretty incredible. And then there's green hydrogen.
Right.
As we talked about, production is likely to be much more geographically dispersed than fossil fuels. So this means that we could see new hydrogen hubs emerge in places that never had much of a role in the global energy system before.
So countries that were traditionally energy importers could become
exporters.
Wow.
Okay.
Right.
So it's like completely flipping the script on global energy dynamics.
Wow, that's huge. And this shift isn't going to be confined to just the energy sector. It's going to have ripple effects
throughout the economy.
Throughout the entire global economy, right?
Yeah.
New industries are going to spring up around renewable energy technologies. Supply chains will be reconfigured. Investments will flow to new regions.
So it's almost like the whole map.
It's like the whole map is being redrawn.
Of the global economy.
Yeah.
Being redrawn.
Yeah, and I think that's why the report really calls for this, this proactive and anticipatory approach to policymaking.
Yeah, it's not just about reacting to the changes that are happening. It's about
shaping the future that we want to see.
And that brings us back to the big question that this report kind of leaves us with. Right?
That's right, the big question.
Which is, how do we ensure that this energy transition is not only secure, but just and equitable
for all nations?
For all nations.
That's the big challenge, but it's also, I think, a huge opportunity.
It is.
If we get this right, we have the potential to create a more sustainable, more prosperous, and more peaceful world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And it's a conversation that really needs to involve everyone.
Yeah.
Right? from policymakers and industry leaders to researchers, activists, everyday citizens.
Yeah.
This is a global challenge that demands a global response.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive, I feel like.
Yeah.
So much to think about.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Well, that's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
There's always more to explore.
Yeah.
And as this energy transition continues to unfold, I have a feeling we're going to be revisiting these themes
Oh, for sure.
many times in the future.
Many, many times.
So,
Well, I'm definitely eager to continue the conversation, but for now, let's take a break, and we'll come back for part 3 to really delve into the policy recommendations and strategies for navigating this complex energy transformation.
okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into energy security. And we've talked a lot about, the big picture stuff,
The trends,
the challenges.
yeah.
But now let's get practical. Like, what can countries actually do to make sure that they navigate this energy transition successfully?
Well, the IRENA report actually offers some really concrete policy recommendations.
Okay.
Almost like a roadmap.
Okay.
For countries to kind of follow as they chart their course through all this.
I'm ready. What are some of the key things?
Well, one of the first things they emphasize is the need for robust and forward-looking energy security frameworks.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not enough to just focus on like short-term crisis management.
Right.
We need to be thinking decades ahead.
Anticipating the challenges and opportunities that this transition is going to bring.
It's like playing chess.
Yeah.
Right. You got to think several moves ahead.
Exactly.
Anticipate your opponent's strategy and plan your own accordingly.
Exactly. And I think just like in chess, flexibility is crucial because the renewable energy sector is evolving so rapidly.
Right.
There are new technologies emerging all the time, so these frameworks need to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Able to keep up with that pace of innovation.
We can't get bogged down in like policies that might have been relevant yesterday, but are quickly becoming
They're totally irrelevant.
irrelevant. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be nimble, responsive.
Okay, what about international cooperation? I know that was a big part.
Oh, that's huge. Collaboration is absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm.
No country can go it alone in this transition.
Right.
So the report calls for, strengthened international cooperation across a whole range of areas, from technology transfer and investment to the development of common standards for things like green hydrogen.
So it's about creating a kind of level playing field where everybody benefits.
Exactly. Yeah.
From the advancements.
Yeah, it's about fostering a spirit of collaboration rather than competition. Recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And that a global challenge demands a global response.
Right. Right. Okay, well, let's talk about infrastructure.
Okay.
Because as we're talking about, the geography of energy production is going to be totally different.
Totally different.
As renewables become the dominant source.
And that's going to require, some really careful planning and investment in infrastructure.
Yeah, so we're talking about those giant solar farms in North Africa, those wind farms off the coast of Scotland.
Exactly.
Sending all that electricity.
Yeah, so we're going to need, massive interconnectors to transport that electricity across long distances.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to think about repurposing existing infrastructure as well.
Oh, like what?
Well, those old gas pipelines, for example.
Oh, interesting.
Could potentially be used to transport hydrogen.
Okay, yeah. So you're kind of
repurposing
those assets.
Exactly.
Yeah, but all this new infrastructure, I mean,
we got to think about security.
We got to think about security.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like building a house in an earthquake zone, right? You're not just going to focus on how it looks. You're going to make sure it's got a strong foundation and it can withstand the tremors.
I love that analogy. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, protecting the infrastructure itself. It's about understanding the broader context,
Right.
The social, the economic, the environmental factors that can create vulnerabilities in these energy systems.
So we talked about frameworks, cooperation, infrastructure, anything else that countries should be thinking about?
Well, I think, technology access is crucial. And this is not just for developing countries. This is for developed countries as well.
Right.
As this transition accelerates, the competition for critical technologies and materials,
It's going to get fierce.
it's going to get really, really intense.
Yeah.
So countries that can develop and manufacture their own renewable energy technologies are going to be in a much stronger position.
Yeah.
So the report encourages governments to, invest in research and development, support domestic manufacturing,
Yeah.
foster international partnerships to share knowledge and expertise.
So it's about creating a more diverse and resilient global energy system.
Exactly, where no single country has a monopoly on the technologies of the future.
I mean, it's a huge shift in the global balance of power.
It is. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about this energy transition, It's not just about swapping one type of fuel for another. It's about
the whole
reshaping the entire landscape.
Yeah, and
Based in control.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we covered a lot.
We did.
I think we've done a good job of explaining the key themes.
I think so too.
And the implications.
I hope so.
But if there's one key takeaway, I think, that I'm hearing from you, it's that diversification is key.
Diversification is absolutely key.
In what sense?
In every sense. Diversifying our energy sources, diversifying our suppliers, our transportation routes, diversifying our research and development efforts.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Spread the risk.
Yeah.
Create a system that's less vulnerable to any single point of failure.
Okay. That's good advice for countries, companies.
For everyone.
For everyone.
I think the more we can embrace this idea of diversification in our approach to energy, the stronger and more secure our collective future is going to be.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I have a much better understanding of what energy security means.
Good. I'm glad to hear.
In the 21st century.
Me too.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to break it all down for us.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, this is just the beginning of the conversation.
Right. Absolutely. There's always more to learn.
Yeah.
More to discuss, more to explore.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the forces that are shaping our world.
Absolutely.
Until next time.